Alright, let's look at how I do the lighting and Skybox. So I'm dragging in some lighting from previous year's track, updating the Skybox references to the current year, checking out my actual Skybox files. So I'm just opening up the track to see how the lighting specifically works. Basically, I want to get the lighting sorted out first, so that the Skybox can match the lighting of the track. Basically, the sun can be positioned on the Skybox so that the light is coming from the same direction. But yeah, I want to get it kind of sorted out on the track first, just to make sure everything looks as good as it can. Obviously, the angle of the sun makes a big difference on how visible ruts and bumps are. So I'm just taking a lap around the track here to see if the lighting is working okay. And for the most part, you can kind of see everything. I feel like the lighting is maybe just a little dark. It almost has like a kind of cloudy feel to it. So at this point, I'm feeling really pretty good overall about the angle of the light, but like I said, it's feeling a little dim. So I'm gonna pop over and grab the brightness values from the previous round, WW Ranch, just to see if that helps brighten things up a little bit and just keeps consistency round to round. I'm also grabbing last year's Skybox images, just to have a reference, because I'm not sure what the Skybox in there was from. Oh, it looks like it was actually from WW Range. So dropping in High Point Skybox from last year. Bringing in a satellite image for the overlay just for reference, since this overlay is definitely in progress. So yeah, I'm just pulling up the previous round, WW Ranch, and grabbing the color, the light, color, ambience, and fog values and dropping them in. I'm keeping the angle of the sun the same. It's really just the brightness that's changing. So yeah, the obviously the satellite overlay has a big effect, but already I feel like this has just a more clear sunny day feeling than the previous brightness values did. And that satellite image is a little distracting on what the shadows are actually doing, so I'm going to disable the decals and see how that looks. So as you can see, the angles are pretty similar. It's just overall a bit brighter, sunnier feeling. Just kind of taking a lap around, making sure I feel okay about this. Looking pretty good so far. The ruts are clear for the most part. There's some situations like this where the rut changes from a shadow to a highlight partway through the turn just because of the angle, where it does make it a little harder to see, but there's really no way to avoid that in all corners of the track just because of the way that things lay out. But for the most part, you can see where everything is. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with the actual lighting. I'm going to turn down the fog just a little bit because WW Ranch is that, humid Florida weather. And now I'm going to go in and actually start working on the Skybox. So first I'm pulling it up last year's Skybox. The way I do it is rather than editing the individual Skybox files, I start with this sphere map. It's basically a 360 degree map, and then I use JLV's POV Ray file to split these up into the individual things. So I'm just checking out what I had from last year. Looks like I had the sunny sky. I brought the sun down a little bit to line up. So I'm just gonna merge those sky layers. I've got a layer group with the ground, a layer group with some color correction, and then I've got the sky as the background. So the ground I actually took from screenshots from Google Earth. Basically, I just hovered the camera above the track and then spun around and made a panorama with that. And now for the sky, I'm just looking at some reference images from RacerX and other places online to get a feel for what the sky looked like there. And now I'm just scrolling through kind of this little library of skies that I have and pulling out any that seem like they could be appropriate. I get most of my skies from cgskies.com. They have free, I mean, you can buy high resolution or HDR versions of their skies, but they also offer free kind of sample size versions, which tends to be plenty of resolution for this. I mean, I definitely have to scale it up, but it works. So here I've pulled into Photoshop, looks like 3 different sky options. Maybe I'll grab one more here. Yep. I try not to use the same sky on more than one track in a year, but I don't mind pulling skies from previous years if they're really good. So I'm just kind of flicking through these to see which one I feel like fits the vibe, and looks like this one is my choice. So I scale it up to 8K wide by 4K high. I'll copy and paste that into here, and right away it doesn't look too, I mean, with the color correction group I already have going on, it blends in pretty nice, but I will definitely need to reposition the sun. So as a reference, I have last year's sky, and you can see the sun is about 33 degrees up, and it looks like about 228 or so degrees. I have this kind of grid overlay that helps me line up the sun. And then I have a calculator in Excel that helps me translate these coordinates to the XYZ coordinates that the game uses for the sun vector. So anyway, I'm kind of, basically I use the offset filter to shift the sun horizontally, and then do some scaling and Photoshop trickery to reposition the sun vertically. I work with a lot of duplicated layers, so I can kind of always go back, just bringing that sun down overlaid with the old one. The lighten blend mode is very handy with skies. Then I'll add a mask to that, the repositioned sun layer, and just pull out the sun right there in the area that I want it. Set it to lighten, and it gets that blend going nicely. And I can kind of feather the mask a little bit with the paintbrush. Different sizes and opacities. Here I'm turning down the flow a lot to just kind of blend things in. And here I've kind of gone a little bit too far in erasing the sun, so I'll need to zoom in. It's important in order for the sun flares to work that the directly behind the sun vector have a pure white pixels. So I'm just making sure that's nice and bright. Now I'll go to this layer below, and I need to erase that original higher sun. I'm taking the this kind of squished down layer and stretching the top out. I found that shrinking the sky a little bit vertically adds a little more detail in that kind of prime, like low horizon area that most writers see, and then you can stretch it out above that because you're rarely looking straight up in the sky on the Skybox. So now I'll go in and I'm going to use the patch healing tool to first kind of get rid of that main sun. That gets me going, but the edges look a little weird, so I'll use the healing brush tools to try and smooth that out a bit. So just kind of trying to blend those edges so it feels natural and it doesn't look like I've messed with it too much. And then to blend it a little more, I'm just going to pick a color from the sky and just kind of airbrush it in there a little bit just to smooth that section out. I'm using, I really like using masks, so I've chosen a color fill layer and I'm just painting the mask over it. Setting the blend mode to darken helps it blend kind of nicely, and you can see once I turn on these color adjustment layers, it's just a little brightness and contrast. It really starts to blend in pretty nice. And here I'm adjusting the curves to make that blue sky pop a little more. This is all just kind of basic like photo retouching stuff that I'm doing at this point. It's important that on the far edges, basically it's important that the image can tile seamlessly, because like I said, it's a 360-degree view, so the right and left side of the image needs to be able to match up perfectly. So any adjustments I do, I try and make sure that yeah, there's nothing happening on one side of the image that's not happening on the other, or vice versa. So here I'm grabbing a hue saturation layer from the WW Ranch Skybox that kind of pops that blue a little more. I like to try and keep a consistent feel of the skies from round to round, especially in just that blue. Blue is kind of it's like a key color. It's something that our eyes latch onto, and if the blue looks a little off between things, that can be more noticeable than you might think. So keeping that consistent. So now I'm dropping this. I've exported the sphere map, brought it into POV Ray, did a quick test render, and I noticed that there's some kind of artifacting happening in the clouds in this upper part of the image. You see there's like this kind of hard line. So I'm gonna go in and see if I can't smooth that out. So just like redoing the scaling a little bit, fine-tuning it. I assumed it was an aliasing thing, but it might just be something in the original image. Looks like I wasn't totally satisfied with what I did with the sun there, so I'm going to try that again. Using really low flow rates to airbrush this blue back in there. So now let's zoom in, and here we go. We're going to try and take care of this sharp edge that bothered me originally. So yeah, just using the healing brush tool to kind of feather it out a little bit. Healing brush is great for organic stuff like this because it's like a smart clone tool. And that's looking better, so I'll save and export the sphere map. Now I can bring that into POV Ray again. And there we go, that's looking a little better. There is a script for this that JLV released that's supposedly, as I understand it, should automatically export all of these images, but I have never gotten it to work, so I end up just exporting one at a time and renaming them manually, which is a little bit of a pain, but I've done it enough times now that it goes pretty quickly. Except for when I do typos there. I also don't super understand the language, the programming language in POV Ray, so I'm sure there's a more efficient way to do this, but this is the best I can do at the limit of my abilities. Number 5 you don't really need because that's just looking straight down. Number 6 is a useful one though, because it will reveal any seams. So I like to open that up and take a look and just make sure that it all looks seamless. If there is, like I said, any sections of that sphere map that don't tile seamlessly, that Skybox number 6 will show it to you pretty clearly. So now I'm bringing it in game. I noticed right away I'm looking at the sun, but I'm not getting any lens flares. So I was just checking my graphic settings to make sure that works. And so now I'm going to go and try and figure out why that lens flare isn't showing up. So checking here, it looks like my sun may not be perfectly white. You see we're kind of at 250, 230 it needs to be 255 all the way across, so. And it looks like rather than change my existing sun, I'm just gonna grab last year's sun, bring it up, lighten blend mode, and that's a quick, easy mask to bring that in there. It's a little too blue, so I'll take down the saturation. Yeah, that's kind of a better looking sun anyway. Now I'm gonna go in and just check the mask around the edge. Bring some shadow back into that foreground cloud. And yeah, that's 255, so that's looking better. So I'm gonna export that. Gotta pop back over to POV Ray and delete the Skybox files I had already done and just run through this again real quick. Again, if I knew how to work that script, probably make this a little quicker, but boom, boom, boom. Pull it up in game. Still no lens flares. Now this is where I get confused and I'm like, what's happening? So just check in, trying to do a little troubleshooting. My guess at this point is that the flare vector is not at the correct angle. So I'm gonna bring up my sun angle calculator. And I'm gonna use my guide here, and it looks like we're at 33 degrees and 227 or 228. We'll pop back over to Excel, and I've got my 33 degrees and 227. I'll grab those coordinates. And yeah, that is different from what we had before. So let's drop that in, save it, and see if it works now. There we go. We've got lens flare happening. So now that that's all good, I'm just gonna do a lap around the track. Make sure that the sky feels nice in game. Got that nice blue sky, partly cloudy. Ideally, the just feel of the lighting and the feel of the skybox should match up pretty well. Just want to make sure it looks good from a writer's perspective. The kind of ground in the background blends in with the extended terrain pretty nicely, which is good. This track is also nice because you don't, since you're kind of down in this valley, you don't actually see too much of the edge of the world, which helps that transition. And that's that, Mattress Man. Skybox is done.